Okay, so with that out of the way, let's start doing some cool stuff. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab the Cube Master and I'm going to come over to the Object Data Properties, Motion Paths, and click the big Calculate button. And as in our prior tutorials, it's created a lovely motion path which not only shows us our timing and spacing, but the exact arc our cube takes. This is going to be really useful later when we add some deformation to this cube, and we'll want it to match the path that we're taking. So yeah, great stuff. There's nothing like preparation, eh? That's preparation A, not preparation H, which is much less fun, I guarantee you. Anyway, yeah, moving swiftly onwards, I'm going to grab each of my little triangular widgets on this control panel, and on frame 15, I'm just going to insert a single keyframe to each of them. The reason being is these little widgets, their Z location, so by pulling them up and down, affect certain drivers and some mystical sorceries, some dark magic, if you will, that will actually affect our cube and several aspects of it and allow us to do some very cool animations. So that's why we're adding keyframes to that channel, as you'll see momentarily. As you can see on frame 25, the cube launches itself into the air, so we need to create on around frame 22 an anticipatory action. Just like in our anticipation video, we need to do the opposite of about what's about to happen. So it's going to launch into the air, so prior to doing that, we really want it to squash down and really conserve all its energy. So by pulling down this control, we'll make it squash down really nicely, and it'll automatically keyframe. So squash down, conserve all its energy, and then on frame 25 we want to have a really nice elastic release. As you can see, by pulling it up, it's going to stretch our cube all the way up into the sky. So in case you haven't guessed, this control, what it does, it actually scales, it squashes and stretches our cube from the base of the cube, whereas this one does it from the top of the cube, which we're about to see in a moment. And we've got a little deformation control over here, which I'm going to save for a few minutes' time. So let's take a look at what that looks like now. Hit Alt-A. Squash, stretch. Cool. Okay, we've got a couple of problems. It looks really nice, but by about this point it'd be really cool if it was like stretched out evenly either side, not just sort of all over to one side. So let's take a look and see if we can do something about that. What I'm going to do, I'm going to, with my Squash 2 control selected, I'm just going to come down to its keyframe, which we made on frame 15, and I'm going to drag it over so it starts around frame 25. So it'll animate from this point, not from that point, which is, you know, it's just good practice, eh? And then what we're going to do, we're just going to stretch it up a little bit. And now it's approximately even, so it's still not going to look right. Let's hit Alt-A. And as you can see, it just sort of lazily comes out a little bit at the end. So what I think would be really cool is if this side stuck to the ground, and then as it sort of arced up, it gets left behind. And I think that would look really nice. But unfortunately, because the cube is so straight and rigid, it's going to look weird. So what we can do is we can add some bend. And that's what I'm going to do there. I'm just going to pull this bend control down, and that deforms a curve inside our cube and allows it to create these lovely arc shapes. And what we're going to do is just match it to the motion curve so it looks like it's sort of following that path. And then we're going to bring it back to around here, I'll say frame 23, and we're going to drag the frame we created, the keyframe we created on frame 15 for our bend control, just to around there. And now the animation sort of starts. Yeah, but I think, you know, looking at this, actually, by frame 26, I think we need a bit more deformation already, so we can just punch it up a little. I think that looks pretty cool. Obviously, we're still not stretching the foot of the cube out to meet the floor yet, so let's do that as well. And as you can see, that doesn't look half bad, so let's take a look. Okay, now we are cooking on gas. All we've really got to do is just come over to frame 50, and I think, you know what, it's going to be hitting that floor pretty hard, so why don't we just squash it down? I think that looks pretty cool. And then obviously we don't want that squash to be happening until it makes contact with the floor, so that's pretty good. What else can we do? Well, I figure here we're going to want to, we'll keep that bend around there, make a keyframe for it by giving it a wiggle, and then hit Alt-G to remove the bend, and as you can see, the cube's displaced a little bit because the driver attached to this hasn't caught up yet. All we have to do is just move the playhead and it will update that, so don't worry if you see the cube moving off a little bit weirdly. That's all part of the course, my friend. So that doesn't look too bad. I think, again, we could actually have this this stretch sort of come out to meet the ground a little bit more. I think that might look nice. Actually, what I'm going to do, it's a little bit cheating, but I'm just going to move it so that it actually penetrates the floor a little bit, and correct out that bend a little, and that way it shouldn't need to penetrate the floor. Yeah, there we go. Now it meets the floor properly and is a little bit nicer as it sort of flattens out. In fact, we could do that here as well. The bend is a little bit too much. There we go. And that way it doesn't need to penetrate the floor in any sort of noticeable fashion. So that's looking pretty sweet. I think maybe we need to just grab each of these controls now. Yikes. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to hit Alt-G, and that will break what I've done because I was a little too early on in the animation. Maybe go to about frame 54, hit Alt-G, and that will reset the cube. So let's play back. Squash, stretch, and squash again. And that looks really cool. So now I've taught you all the basic principles you need. You can go ahead and do all the squash and stretch for this side all on your own, and I look forward to seeing what you come up with. So that's how I animate cubes moving in arcs. I use pivot points and weird little bits of deformation to really sort of accentuate it, and hopefully you will have seen a couple of principles here that you can take moving forward and get some really graceful natural animations and really some cool cartoony sort of feeling animations going forward. So I really look forward to seeing what you guys manage to achieve.